AITA for being upset that my boyfriend expects 50-50 on bills but refuses to lift a finger around the house. I never thought I would be the kind of person to post something like this, but at this point, I feel like I am going crazy, and I just need to get it all out. My boyfriend and I have been living together for about 8 months now, and honestly, I feel like I am reaching my breaking point. For some background, I am 24, and he is 27. When we first moved in together, everything felt exciting and new. We had been dating for about 2 years before deciding to take this step, and at the time, it felt like the natural progression of our relationship. I was thrilled. I imagined cozy nights together, shared responsibilities, and finally being able to wake up next to each other every day. Before moving in, we had a conversation about finances, and we both agreed that we would split everything 50-50ths. Rent, utilities, groceries, all of it. That sounded completely fair to me, especially since we both have full-time jobs. What we did not talk about in detail was housework, but I naively assumed that we would split that in a way that made sense. I figured that since we were both adults, it would be a given that we would share the responsibilities of maintaining the home we both lived in. Well, that assumption was wrong. At first, I did not notice it much. In the early weeks of living together, I was just so happy to be sharing a space with him that I did not think too much about who was doing what. I would cook dinner for us, clean up a bit, and handle things like laundry and grocery shopping, but it never really occurred to me that I was doing significantly more. I just saw it as settling in, and I figured he would naturally start contributing more as we got used to our routine. Except he never did. The pattern became obvious after the first couple of months. I would come home from a long, exhausting day at work, and he would already be there, sitting on the couch playing video games or watching TV. Dishes would be piled up in the sink. The laundry basket would be overflowing. The trash would be full. The floors would be covered in little bits of dirt and dust that had accumulated over days of neither of us vacuuming. And he wouldn't do anything about it. It was not even like he was particularly busy. I work a demanding job with long hours, while he has a pretty standard 9-to-5 with little to no stress. Even on days when I worked late, he would just wait for me to get home and then expect me to cook dinner. And I did it. Because if I didn't, we wouldn't eat. There were so many nights where I would be running on fumes, barely holding myself together, and he would casually ask, "So, what's for dinner?" as if it was just understood that I would handle it. At first, I tried not to make a big deal out of it. I figured maybe he just needed a little push, so I started asking him to do small things. "Hey, can you take out the trash?" or "Can you do a load of laundry while I'm at work?" Sometimes he would, sometimes he wouldn't, and if he did, he acted like he deserved a medal for it. The worst part. When I tried to talk to him about it, really talk, he dismissed me. Every single time. I would tell him I was feeling overwhelmed, that I was doing way more housework than he was, and he would roll his eyes and say I was being dramatic. He would say things like, "I help out when I can," or "You're acting like I do nothing," when in reality, I was doing 90% of everything. I was managing the cleaning, the groceries, the cooking, the laundry, the general upkeep of our home, while he barely lifted a finger. And yet, he still expected us to split everything financially like we were two equal contributors in this household. And honestly, that is what pisses me off the most. He wants 50-50 when it comes to money, but when it comes to actual labor, suddenly it is not so equal. He gets to come home and relax after work, but I get to come home and start my second shift. And if I complain about it, I am nagging. If I say that it is unfair, I am making a big deal out of nothing. It has gotten to the point where I feel actual resentment toward him. I feel like I am not his girlfriend, I feel like I am his maid. There have been nights where I have gone to bed exhausted, feeling utterly defeated, while he plays video games in the living room without a care in the world. I have had days where I have cried in the shower because I feel like I am giving everything to this relationship, and he cannot even be bothered to do the bare minimum to make our home a shared space instead of just a place where he exists. And the worst part? I know he is capable of doing more. When he was single, he lived on his own, and somehow, miraculously, he survived. He did his own laundry. He cooked his own meals. He cleaned his own apartment. But now that he lives with me, he has somehow forgotten how to do any of those things. It is like he sees me as the built-in household manager, the one who will just handle everything so that he does not have to. I have tried every approach. I have calmly explained how I feel. I have pointed out the imbalance. I have suggested we make a cleaning schedule. Every time, he brushes me off. I am tired of talking about it because it is clear that he does not care. I do not think I am asking for too much. I am not expecting him to do all the chores, I just want him to contribute equally. I want him to understand that a home is not just about splitting rent and bills, it is about maintaining it together, about making sure that both people feel like they are in a partnership and not in a one-sided arrangement where one person does all the work. So now I am sitting here, stewing in frustration, wondering if I am the one who is in the wrong. Am I expecting too much? Should I just suck it up and accept that this is the way things are? Or am I right to be upset that I am the only one actually putting effort into making our home livable? Because right now, I do not feel like I have a partner. I feel like I have a roommate who expects me to be his personal maid, and I honestly do not know how much longer I can take it. Update 1. I had almost resigned myself to the fact that this would just be my life, being a shadow that keeps this apartment in a functional state while he sits comfortably in the chaos, barely acknowledging the effort it takes to keep everything running. I told myself that maybe this was just how relationships worked, that some people were naturally more responsible than others, and that, unfortunately, I had ended up being the one who cared more. But something inside me was still simmering, an unshakable sense of unfairness that refused to settle down no matter how much I tried to push it aside. It wasn't just about the cleaning. It was about the way he dismissed me, the way he acted like my exhaustion was an overreaction, the way he benefited from my labor while pretending that things just magically fell into place. Then everything changed. It happened by accident. One evening, I was looking for an old book I had packed away when we first moved in, digging through a box of things that we had never bothered to unpack. That was when I found it, his old phone. A dusty, slightly cracked device buried underneath a pile of miscellaneous junk. On impulse, I turned it on, half expecting it to be dead, but to my surprise, it still had some battery left. I don't know why I did it. Curiosity, maybe. A gut feeling. I opened the gallery, expecting to find old photos of friends, maybe some travel pictures or past memories. Instead, I found something else entirely. At first, it was just a mess of random screenshots, some memes, some notes, a few blurry photos of receipts. But then, buried in between, there were pictures of his old apartment. I stared at the screen, my stomach tightening as I scrolled through the images. It wasn't what I had imagined. I had always assumed that before we moved in together, he had been relatively independent, taking care of himself like any normal adult. But these photos told a different story. Complete devastation. The kitchen was a nightmare, dishes stacked in the sink, crusted over with old food, unwashed pots and pans shoved into every available space. The countertops were covered in half-eaten meals and empty takeout containers. The floor was barely visible under the random assortment of trash, clothes, and general debris scattered everywhere. In one photo, I could see a trash bag that had clearly been left for so long that the garbage inside had started to rot, dark liquid seeping out onto the floor. The living room was no better. Dirty clothes were tossed haphazardly over the furniture. A coffee table was covered in plates and empty cans. The entire space looked abandoned, like someone had simply stopped trying a long time ago. This wasn't just a guy who had once taken care of himself. This was a guy who had always lived in filth, in absolute chaos, until someone came along to fix it. It hit me then, like a slow, sick realization unraveling in my mind. He hadn't stopped cleaning because he lived with me. He had never really cleaned in the first place. His survival before we moved in together wasn't proof that he was capable, it was proof that he was willing to live in absolute squalor if no one else was around to take care of it. And that was when I decided to conduct an experiment. I stopped cleaning. Completely. At first, it felt unnatural. I had spent so long making sure things stayed neat and functional that ignoring the mess went against every instinct I had. But I forced myself to step back. I didn't wash the dishes. I didn't do the laundry. I didn't wipe the counters or sweep the floors. I didn't even pick up the stray socks or wrappers he left lying around. I just let it all sit. The first few days, nothing changed. He didn't even seem to notice. The dishes piled up in the sink, the floors got dirtier, and the laundry basket overflowed. I watched as he grabbed a new plate every time he ate, stacking them on top of the others without a second thought. It was like he had zero awareness of what was happening around him. By the end of the first week, the kitchen looked like a bomb had gone off. The counters were covered in crumbs and spills, the trash was overflowing, and the smell was starting to seep into the air. Still, he said nothing. By the second week, I started noticing small signs of discomfort. He was running out of clean clothes, recycling had started taking over the dining table, and the sink was so full that he had to maneuver things around just to fill a glass of water. He wasn't doing anything about it, but there was a slight shift in his behavior, an occasional glance at the mess, a moment of hesitation before stepping over something on the floor. By the third week, things had reached a breaking point. His clothes were completely gone, reduced to a small rotation of whatever he could find that wasn't visibly filthy. The kitchen was practically unusable. There was nowhere to sit comfortably without being surrounded by junk. That was when he finally said it. "Something's a little dirty here, don't you think?" I didn't get angry. I didn't yell or list off everything I had done for months while he had done nothing. I just looked at him and said, "I think we both live here. Who do you think usually cleans this?" That was the first time I saw his face change, like something was finally coming to mind. He didn't make excuses. He didn't deflect. He just stood there for a moment, staring at the disaster around us, like he was actually seeing it for the first time. Then, without another word, he got up, grabbed a rag, and started washing the dishes. It was a small step, but maybe all is not lost yet. Update 2. After our little experiment, things did seem to improve, at least on the surface. He started helping out more, not just with the small, easy tasks, but with actual chores. He vacuumed the living room, he cooked dinner once in a while, and he even did the laundry without me having to ask. It felt like progress. I told myself that maybe this had been the wake-up call he needed, that he had finally realized how unfair things had been and was actively working to change. For the first time in months, I felt a tiny sliver of hope. But then something strange started happening. At first, it was little things. When he did clean, he made a big deal out of it. If he wiped down the counters, he would casually mention it multiple times throughout the night, waiting for me to acknowledge it. If he took out the trash, he would linger by the door afterward, glancing in my direction like he was expecting applause. If I didn't immediately say thank you, he would get weirdly quiet and sulky, like I had somehow wronged him. One night, after I had spent hours deep cleaning the bathroom, scrubbing the grout, washing the shower curtain, even organizing the cabinets, I made a passing comment about how exhausting it had been. He barely looked up from his phone before saying, "Yeah, well, I took out the trash today, so we both worked hard." The trash. The one task that had taken him all of 30 seconds. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him and make him see the absurdity of what he had just said, but I swallowed it down, telling myself that at least he was trying. I had to remind myself that change took time, that it was better than him doing nothing. But deep down, something still felt off. Then things started disappearing. At first, it was small enough that I didn't think much of it. A sponge I had just bought went missing. Then a bottle of all-purpose cleaner. I assumed I had misplaced them, convinced myself that maybe I had thrown them out without realizing it. But then, the vacuum disappeared. I searched everywhere. The closet, the laundry room, even under the bed, but it was gone. I stood in the middle of the apartment, confusion turning into frustration, trying to piece together how a vacuum just vanished. Finally, I asked him if he had seen it. He hesitated, just for a second. Then he said, "Oh, yeah, I took it to the dumpster. It broke." The vacuum that I had just used a week ago. The vacuum that had worked perfectly fine. I asked him how it had broken. Another pause. "I don't know, it just stopped working." Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. It didn't make sense. He hadn't mentioned anything about it before. There had been no moment of frustration, no attempt to fix it. Just a perfectly working vacuum that had, according to him, mysteriously died and been thrown out. I let it go at the time, but the feeling stayed with me. And a few days later, I saw it. It was in the maintenance closet of our building, leaning against the wall along with a few other supplies. My exact vacuum. Same model, same minor wear on the handle. I felt my breath catch in my throat as I stared at it, my mind racing. When I asked the building manager about it, he shrugged and said, "Oh yeah, someone left it by the dumpster, but it still works fine, so I took it." I stood there, my body going cold. He hadn't just lied. He had deliberately gotten rid of it. When I confronted him, he tried to brush it off, but I pushed. He dodged, made excuses, but after enough back and forth, he finally admitted it. He had thrown it away on purpose. Not because it was broken. Not because he thought we needed a new one. But because, as he put it, if we didn't have a vacuum, he wouldn't have to worry about forgetting to use it. I couldn't speak. I stood there, staring at him, waiting for him to realize how ridiculous, how manipulative, that sounded. But he just shrugged, like it was the most logical thing in the world. And that was when it hit me. He wasn't just lazy. He wasn't just inconsiderate. He was actively trying to sabotage the housework so that he wouldn't be expected to do it. It wasn't just the vacuum. The missing sponge. The disappearing cleaner. The way he made a huge deal out of doing basic tasks, like he wanted me to feel guilty for expecting him to contribute. It had all been deliberate. He was creating a situation where I would either do everything myself or feel like a bad person for asking him to help. And when that hadn't worked, he had started removing the tools that made it possible for me to even ask. I felt sick. This wasn't about chores anymore. This was something deeper, something calculated. It wasn't just laziness, it was a way to make sure I stayed the one carrying the load, while he got to sit back and pretend it wasn't his fault. I didn't know what to do with that realization. But I knew one thing, this was bigger than just chores. Update 3. I wish I could say the vacuum incident was the last straw, but honestly, things only got weirder from there. After that, I started paying closer attention. The missing cleaning supplies, the way he avoided tasks, the fact that I was always the one noticing when something needed to be done, it wasn't just laziness. It was something else, something calculated. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. So I started watching. And what I found made my skin crawl. One night, after a long day at work, I went to wash my hands in the bathroom. That was when I noticed it. The soap dispenser was almost completely full. That didn't make sense. We had been using that bottle for weeks, it should have been running low by now. I didn't think much of it at first, but something about it nagged at me. So I tested it. I washed my hands, noting the exact level of soap in the bottle. Then, the next morning, I checked again. It was full. He had refilled it with water. That was when I started checking everything else. The dish soap. Watered down. The laundry detergent. Practically clear. The all-purpose cleaner. Completely useless. He wasn't just skipping chores, he was actively creating the illusion that they were being done. That was when the feeling of unease turned into something else entirely. At first, I thought this was laziness taken to an extreme. That he had simply found a way to cut corners and avoid responsibility, as if that was any better. But the more I paid attention, the clearer it became that this wasn't just about avoiding work. It was about deception. It was about control. Then, I found the notebook. It was buried in the junk drawer, tucked beneath a mess of old receipts, expired coupons, and loose batteries. A plain, nondescript little notebook I had never seen before. I almost ignored it, thinking it was just another scrap of clutter, but something made me pick it up. Inside, I found pages upon pages of notes. But this wasn't a to-do list. It wasn't reminders of things he needed to get done. No. It was strategies. Methods. A detailed, handwritten playbook on how to avoid housework. Vacuuming too much clogs the filter. Wait a week so she won't notice. If she asks about the dishes, say you were about to do them but got distracted. Offer to do them later, she'll probably do it herself first. Laundry, mix colors so she won't trust me to do it again. If she gets mad, do one big cleanup, act exhausted, then say we should switch to a once-a-week system. Page after page of manipulative tactics, all designed to get out of doing his fair share. I sat there, gripping the notebook with cold, clammy hands, reading through each entry with mounting horror. This wasn't just laziness. This wasn't just irresponsibility. This was intentional. He had never planned on contributing equally. He had never wanted to. This whole time, he had been managing me, manipulating me, making sure that I was the one carrying the workload while he got to sit back and pretend to be incompetent. He hadn't been passively ignoring the mess, he had been actively working to keep himself from being held accountable for it. I thought about all the times he had let me break down in exhaustion, all the times he had called me dramatic, all the times he had let me believe I was just expecting too much. He had never been clueless. He had never been unaware. He had always known exactly what he was doing. That night, I placed the notebook on the coffee table, right where he would see it. Then I waited. When he found it, his face dropped. He tried to play it off, letting out an awkward chuckle, but I wasn't laughing. I wasn't playing his game anymore. He must have realized that because, after a long pause, he finally admitted it. He told me he had just wanted to see how long it would take before I gave up. That he figured if he held out long enough, I would stop asking him to do stuff. I don't even remember what I said after that. I don't remember if I yelled or if I sat there in stunned silence. I don't remember if I told him exactly how disgusting his behavior was, or if I simply turned and walked away. I don't remember how long I stood there, staring at the person I had been building a life with, realizing I had never actually known him at all. But I remember one thing clearly. I was done playing his game. Update 4. After reading that notebook, I felt like my entire relationship had been some kind of twisted psychological experiment. My boyfriend had documented his avoidance strategies like he was conducting research. He hadn't just been lazy, he had been calculated in making sure I carried the mental and physical load of our home. I won't lie, my first instinct was to pack my bags and leave. But something held me back. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was the sheer absurdity of the situation, or maybe, deep down, I needed to understand why he had done this. So I didn't leave. Instead, I waited. That night, he sat on the couch, avoiding my gaze. The air between us was heavy, thick with everything unsaid. Finally, I spoke. I need to know why. His reaction surprised me. He didn't roll his eyes, didn't deflect. Instead, he looked down at his hands and let out a slow breath, like he had been waiting for this moment, too. I don't know, he admitted. I mean, I do, but I don't. At first, I thought I was just trying to make life easier for myself. But then it became a thing. Like, if I gave in, it meant I'd lost. Lost what? I asked, genuinely baffled. He hesitated. Control, I guess. He ran a hand through his hair. I lived like a slob before you. I knew that. But when we moved in together, I felt like, suddenly, I had all these expectations on me. And instead of just dealing with it like a grown adult, I turned it into this messed up game in my head. If I could hold out longer than you, then I wouldn't have to change. I stared at him, trying to wrap my head around the sheer childishness of it. So you sabotaged everything, just to prove you could? His face twisted, like he hated the words but knew they were true. Yeah, he finally said. And I hate that I did it. For the first time in a long time, I saw real regret in his eyes. Not the passive, half-hearted ugh, fine, I'll do it attitude I had been dealing with for months, but actual remorse. And that's when I realized something, this wasn't just about chores. This was about him. I had spent months thinking he simply didn't care, but the truth was, he had been so stuck in his own ego, his need to avoid change, his fear of losing control, that he had actively fought against becoming a better partner. It wasn't malice. It was immaturity. That didn't make it okay. But it meant there was something to work with. So I made a choice. I need you to do better, I said, voice firm but calm. Not because I nagged you into it. Not because I stopped cleaning and forced your hand. But because you actually want to be a partner in this. He nodded, and for once, I believed he actually heard me. Over the next few months, things didn't magically fix themselves overnight. But slowly, genuinely, things changed. Not just in how we handled chores, but in how we communicated. He started listening, not just waiting for me to stop talking. He started taking initiative, not waiting for me to break down and beg him to do something. And the biggest change? He started wanting to contribute. There were slip-ups, of course. Old habits don't die easily. But when he forgot something or slacked off, it wasn't with the same defiant stubbornness as before. It was just forgetfulness, and when I reminded him, he actually responded instead of shutting down. One night, a few months after the notebook incident, I came home to find him cooking dinner. The kitchen was already clean, a load of laundry was running, and there was a sticky note on the fridge that just said, "I'm trying." And that was all I had ever wanted. I don't know if we'll be perfect. I don't even know if this will last forever. But I do know this, he's finally choosing to be a partner, not just a guy who lives in the same space as me. And for now, that's enough.